Welcome to Book Summary Podcast, your gateway to personal transformation. Each episode delivers big ideas from the world's most impactful books on mindset, productivity, and success, all in just a few minutes. Ready to turn knowledge into action? Let's get started.
Okay, let's unpack this. Do you ever feel like your mind is just a runaway train?
Pulling you constantly into worries about the future or maybe regrets about the past.
Exactly. That incessant mental chatter, that feeling of being perpetually busy, maybe a bit overwhelmed by all the internal noise.
Or constantly chasing some elusive happiness that always seems to be just around the next corner.
Yeah, in the next achievement or maybe the next relationship.
It always seems just out of reach.
Right. Well, if you've ever found yourself caught in that kind of relentless mental loop, then today's deep dive is absolutely for you.
Absolutely. Today, we're introducing you to a truly transformative work that speaks directly to that very experience. Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
And it really is transformative, isn't it? It's not just tips and tricks.
No, not at all. This isn't just another self-help book. It's presented as a radical pathway to inner freedom and, well, profound peace. It aims to fundamentally change how we understand ourselves and the world around us.
So how does it do that? What's the core idea?
It's all about shifting our identity, moving away from identifying with an external, time-bound self, the one defined by our past experiences and our future aspirations.
The story we tell ourselves about who we are.
Precisely. And shifting towards an internal, timeless presence that Tolle argues is available to all of us right here, right now, regardless of our circumstances. It's a profound reorientation of consciousness, really.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Today, we're making a deep dive into how to effectively escape that relentless mental noise, how to navigate the often complex and overwhelming world of our emotions.
Which are so tied into that mental noise.
Exactly. And how simply being present, fully anchored in this moment, can unlock surprising facts and these aha moments about your true self, allowing you, hopefully, to experience life with a whole new level of clarity and, dare I say, joy.
Our mission for this deep dive, then, is to extract the most potent and, importantly, actionable insights from these carefully selected excerpts from Tolle's groundbreaking work.
Right. We're giving you the highlights, the core messages.
We aim to provide you with a shortcut, if you like, to being not just well-informed, but deeply informed about what many believe is a profound shift in human consciousness already underway globally. We're going to explore how these ideas challenge conventional wisdom and offer practical pathways to a more peaceful existence.
Okay, so the source material, it kicks off by challenging some really deeply ingrained beliefs. Stuff most of us hold about ourselves in reality without even thinking about it. It even references Abraham Maslow's peak experiences, those fleeting, almost transcendent moments of exhilaration or profound connection, maybe overwhelming beauty that some people report having.
Those moments that feel extraordinary, outside of normal life.
Right. But what if those peak experiences, which Maslow described as moments where we kind of sneak a glimpse of the eternal realm of being itself, what if they weren't just rare, fleeting moments?
What if they were pointing to something more permanent?
Exactly. What if they were actually glimpses of a much broader, more profound reality that we could, in fact, inhabit more consistently?
Well, that's precisely where the book goes. What's truly fascinating here is that it posits humanity is, in fact, undergoing nothing less than a quantum leap forward in its evolutionary development.
A quantum leap. That's a big claim.
It is. And it suggests this isn't just a subtle shift. It requires a fundamental shift in worldview, a completely new way of seeing things.
And this new worldview, it's not just abstract philosophy, is it?
No, not at all. It seeks to answer the two most vital questions any sentient being can ask. Who are we really at our deepest essence? And what is the true nature of the universe we inhabit?
And the answers we give, consciously or unconsciously, shape everything.
They profoundly dictate the quality and characteristics of our personal relationships with family, friends, colleagues. And when you scale that up, they define the very societies and cultures we create. The prevailing Western worldview, as the source points out, is built upon several deeply held myths that are now being called into question.
By both spiritual insights and science, interestingly enough.
Exactly. Both are pointing towards a need to rethink these foundational assumptions.
So let's start there. Let's begin by really digging into and maybe debunking these core myths that many of us implicitly believe, often without even realizing it. The first one feels like a real cornerstone of how we see ourselves collectively.
It really is. The first myth we need to address is this pervasive idea that humanity has reached the pinnacle of its development.
Like, this is as good as it gets, folks.
Pretty much. It's a deeply ingrained assumption for many, suggesting we've hit some kind of evolutionary ceiling, at least in terms of consciousness. But the source challenges this directly, citing Michael Murphy, who co-founded the Esalen Institute.
Ah, Esalen. Very influential.
Very. And Murphy, drawing from a huge range of fields, comparative religion, medical science, anthropology, even studies on peak performance in sports, he makes a compelling and quite provocative case for more advanced stages of human development.
The stages beyond where most of us currently are.
Exactly. Yeah. He suggests that as individuals genuinely begin to reach these more, let's say, spiritually mature levels of consciousness, extraordinary capacities begin to blossom within them.
And we're not talking about, like, growing wings or any...
No, not new physical traits. It's more about an expansion of our inherent potential. For example, he highlights things like heightened capacities for love and compassion, a noticeable increase in vitality and inner energy.
Okay.
A deeper, more authentic understanding of who you really are. Enhanced bodily awareness, what some might call somatic intelligence, sharpened intuition and perception that goes beyond just the five senses.
Wow.
Even more profound and perhaps telepathic forms of communication, and a much stronger, more aligned sense of volition and purpose in life.
That's quite a list. So how do we get there?
Well, the crucial first step, Murphy argues, is simply to recognize that these stages and capacities actually exist. Because, as he puts it, most people do not.
We limit ourselves because we don't even conceive of these possibilities. It's like we put a lid on our own potential just by not acknowledging it.
Precisely. It almost sounds too simple, doesn't it?
It does. So if we can just recognize that there's more to us than we thought, then maybe we can find methods to actually cultivate these capacities with conscious intention.
That's the implication. This isn't about physical evolution in the Darwinian sense, then, but a spiritual or conscious maturing. It suggests there's vast, untapped human potential, far beyond what most of us acknowledge.
It really challenges that whole idea of stagnation in human consciousness, doesn't it? Like we're somehow finished.
It absolutely does. It opens up an entirely new horizon for what it means to be human, for what's possible for us.
Okay, fascinating. What's the second myth it tackles?
The second one is equally fundamental. It's the deeply ingrained belief that we are completely separate from each other, from nature, and from the cosmos.
The idea that I'm me, you're you, and that tree is just a tree, totally separate entities.
Exactly. This myth of other than me, as the source calls it, is directly blamed for, well, almost everything that's wrong with the world. Global conflict, widespread environmental destruction, all forms of human injustice and suffering.
How does it make that connection?
The logic is strikingly simple, really. Who in their right mind would consciously harm another living being or destroy the natural world that sustains us or inflict injustice if they genuinely experience that person or that part of nature as an inseparable part of themselves?
You wouldn't poison your own well, essentially.
Exactly. And Dr. Stan Grof's extensive research into non-ordinary states of consciousness states, often involving profound experiences of oneness, provides compelling evidence against this idea of fundamental separation.
Right. People report feeling connected to everything.
Precisely. Grof summarizes his findings by saying that the psyche and consciousness of each of us is, in the last analysis, commensurate with all that is, because there are no absolute boundaries between the body ego and the totality of existence.
Wow. No absolute boundaries.
And furthermore, look at Dr. Larry Dossey's work on what he calls Era 3 medicine. He provides robust scientific support for phenomena like the healing power of prayer at a distance.
That's always controversial, the prayer studies.
It is, because it clashes with our classical understanding of physics. But Dossey highlights studies showing that one person's focused thoughts or intentions can, in documented cases, actually influence another person's physiology, their body, even across vast distances.
Which shouldn't be possible according to standard physics.
Right. The known principles of physics say that shouldn't happen. Yet the preponderance of evidence, Dossey argues, suggests that it does indeed happen.
That interconnectedness sounds almost mystical, maybe like something out of science fiction. But you mentioned earlier the source highlights how even cutting-edge physics hints at this.
Yes, absolutely. It details the famous 1982 aspect experiment in France, which was a groundbreaking quantum physics experiment.
Ah, the Bell tests, aspects version.
Exactly. Scientists observed two quantum particles that were once linked, once part of the same system, And here's the incredible part. Even when they were separated by vast distances, if one particle instantly changed its state, the other one changed too. Instantly.
Faster than light could travel between them.
Precisely. It's as if they were still connected somehow, defying our conventional understanding of physics, where information isn't supposed to travel faster than light. The book uses this to suggest that maybe there are doorways into higher dimensions, or perhaps a deeper, unseen reality that underpins what we perceive as separate objects and events.
So the science itself starts to crack open the door to this idea that maybe we're far more interconnected than we usually assume, right down at a fundamental level.
Exactly. This scientific mystery, this spooky action at a distance, as Einstein called it, truly underscores the potential for a profound, unseen interconnectedness that goes far beyond our everyday experience. It challenges our perception of just being isolated individuals.
It strongly suggests that our current scientific models might be incomplete, or at least they're operating within a limited framework.
That's the implication. What we perceive as separate might be far more intrinsically connected than we currently realize. It really pushes the boundaries of our understanding of reality itself.
Which leads us perfectly into the third myth that the source material really challenges. The belief that the physical world is all there is.
The materialist assumption.
Right. Traditional science, or at least a certain interpretation of it, tends to limit reality exclusively to what's measurable, what can be tested in a laboratory, or maybe probed by our five senses or their technological extensions.
If you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Or at least it's not worth talking about scientifically.
And the logical, though often unstated consequence of that approach is that all of reality gets effectively collapsed into physical reality. Spiritual dimensions, non-physical aspects of consciousness, they get pushed out of the serious discourse, sometimes even actively denied.
Right. This narrowly defined scientific perspective stands in stark opposition to what's known as the perennial philosophy.
Which isn't one single philosophy, right? It's more like a consensus across traditions.
Exactly. It's a profound philosophical consensus that has spanned ages, religions, traditions, and cultures all across human history. It essentially argues that there are certain universal truths about reality found across all these diverse spiritual paths.
And what does this perennial philosophy say about reality?
It consistently describes different but continuous dimensions of reality, ranging from the most dense and least conscious, which we typically call matter, all the way up to the least dense and most conscious dimensions, which we might label as spiritual or divine or pure consciousness.
A whole spectrum of reality, not just the physical slice.
The whole spectrum.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, this kind of extended multidimensional model of reality is also being suggested in different ways by modern quantum theorists.
Oh, like who?
Well, the source mentions people like Jacques Carfetti, who talks about the possibility of superluminal travel faster than light, and explains it by suggesting the existence of other dimensions of reality that our current physics just can't grasp yet.
Okay.
And also the legendary physicist David Bohm with his explicate and implicate models of reality.
Right, the implicate order being the hidden, deeper level.
Exactly. The explicate is the visible, tangible, physical world we perceive day to day. The implicate is a deeper, non-physical, hidden order from which the physical world unfolds. Kind of like a hologram projecting from a deeper dimension.
So this implies a much richer, much more expansive reality than our conventional five senses perceive. It really opens the door to, well, a multitude of non-physical experiences and potentially a far deeper understanding of existence itself.
It's like saying the full spectrum of consciousness encompasses both physical and a multitude of non-physical dimensions of reality. A reality that's not only vibrant and alive, but also interconnected on levels we're maybe just beginning to glimpse.
It's an incredibly different way of looking at existence, isn't it? It challenges the very foundations of how many of us were taught to see the world.
It absolutely does. What these pioneers, from spiritual teachers like Tolle to groundbreaking scientists like Bohm, are suggesting is a worldview fundamentally contrary to the traditional paradigm we've inherited.
So to recap those myths, we haven't reached the pinnacle of development, we aren't fundamentally separate, and the physical world isn't all there is.
That's the core challenge they present. At its heart, this emerging worldview involves seeing yourself, others, and all of life, not just through the eyes of our small, everyday, earthly self that lives and is born in time.
The ego self.
Right, but seeing through the eyes of the soul, our being, our true self, whatever term resonates. And this brings us directly to the central, most transformative message of Eckhart Tolle and the power of now. He really takes his place among these world-class teachers by asserting that the problem of humanity is deeply rooted in the mind itself, or rather our misidentification with mind.
That's such a profoundly personal statement, isn't it? The idea that the root problem isn't out there in our circumstances, but right here in our own minds. That feels uncomfortable.
It can be, definitely. For many of us, the mind is our most trusted tool, right? It's the very instrument we use to navigate the world, solve problems, achieve our goals.
So can you really unpack what Tolle means by this misidentification with the mind? How does that specific thing lead to the problems and the suffering we experience every day?
It's a crucial distinction he makes. The source explains that our natural drifting awareness, this inherent tendency to take the path of least resistance by being less than fully awake to the present moment, unwittingly creates a kind of internal void, a space where presence should be.
Okay, like we're not fully home.
Exactly. And then the mind, which was originally designed to be a useful servant, a tool for practical navigation and problem solving, it compensates for this void by effectively proclaiming itself master.
It takes over the show.
It takes over the show. Instead of serving us, it starts running us. Like a restless butterfly flitting from one thought to another, the mind compulsively engages with past experiences, replaying them, regretting them, analyzing them.
Or endlessly worrying about the future.
Or, as the book puts it, projecting its own made-for-television movie. It endlessly anticipates what is to come, worrying about potential futures, planning, strategizing. Seldom do we find ourselves just resting in the oceanic depth of the here and now, fully present, fully alive.
But that's where the peace is supposed to be found.
Precisely. Tolle argues it is here in the now where we find our true selves, which lies behind our physical body, shifting emotions, and chattering mind. Our ultimate destiny, the book suggests, isn't merely our ability to reason and think, as amazing as that is, but to reconnect with our essential being, our timeless essence.
And to express that essence in the world.
Yes, to express our extraordinary divine reality in the ordinary physical world, moment by moment. That's the core of conscious living, according to this perspective.
This reminds me so much of Eckhart Tolle's own story, his personal anecdote, which he shares in the book. It perfectly illustrates this point about misidentification and the shift.
It's an incredibly powerful story.
He recounts how one night, not long after his 29th birthday, he woke up in a state of just absolute dread. He'd felt this kind of anxiety before, apparently, but this time it was more intense, more crushing than ever.
Unbearable.
Yeah. And the thought, I cannot live with myself any longer, kept repeating in his mind, just tormenting him. Then suddenly he became aware of how peculiar, how contradictory that thought actually was.
The structure of the thought itself.
Right. He paused and asked himself, am I one or two? If I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me. The I and the self that I cannot live with.
A profound split.
And then this crucial question arose. Maybe only one of them is real. He was so stunned, so fully absorbed by this strange realization that his mind just stopped, complete internal silence.
Wow, just like that.
Just like that. He was fully conscious, but there were no more thoughts. He then felt drawn into what seemed like a vortex of energy, gripped by intense, overwhelming fear, his body shaking uncontrollably.
Terrifying.
He heard the words resist nothing, as if spoken inside his own chest, not from outside, and he felt himself being sucked into a void. And crucially, he notes, it felt as if the void was inside myself rather than outside.
That's a key distinction.
Suddenly, there's no more fear, and he simply let myself fall into that void. He has no memory of what happened next, but he was awakened by a bird chirping outside his window, a sound he realized he'd heard countless times but never truly heard, never truly felt its essence before.
Like hearing it for the first time?
Exactly. He saw this inner image of a precious diamond, radiant and sparkling. He opened his eyes, and the first light of dawn streaming in felt like love itself. He walked around his room recognizing it, yet knowing he had never truly seen it before. Everything was fresh and pristine, as if it had just come into existence.
A complete perceptual shift.
He picked up ordinary objects, a spoon, a piece of clothing, and just marveled at their beauty and aliveness, their sheer isness.
What an absolutely astonishing and vivid experience. He describes living in a state of uninterrupted deep peace and bliss for the next 5 months after that night. A radical transformation from his previous deep suffering.
And how did he understand what happened?
Well, he later understood that this intense pressure of suffering had somehow forced my consciousness to withdraw from its identification with the unhappy and deeply fearful self, which is ultimately, he says, a fiction of the mind.
So the suffering itself broke the identification.
It seems so. This withdrawal, he says, must have been so complete that this false suffering self immediately collapsed, just as if a plug had been pulled out of an inflatable toy, all that constructed emotional and mental identity just deflated, poof.
Leaving what?
Leaving what he calls his true nature as the ever-present I am, consciousness, in its pure state prior to identification with form. This powerful, almost brutal story really illustrates that abrupt collapse of the false suffering self, the ego that we often identify with, revealing one's true nature underneath.
It's a profound shift in identity that, for Tolle, came through extreme suffering. But the book suggests it doesn't have to be that way for us.
Right. The implication is that we can access this state more consciously through practice and awareness without necessarily needing such an intense crisis.
Okay, so the mind, which we usually see as our greatest asset, the very thing that makes us human, is actually presented here as the root of the problem. That still feels incredibly counterintuitive, even unsettling. We value intelligence and thought so highly.
It is unsettling for the ego, certainly, because the ego is deeply identified with thought. The source emphasizes that the greatest obstacle to experiencing this radiant joy of being, this inner peace and aliveness Tolle describes, is precisely our identification with your mind.
And that identification leads to compulsive thinking.
Exactly. Which causes thought to become compulsive. It's not thought itself that's the problem. Tolle is clear on that. Thinking is a useful tool. It's the compulsion to think, the inability to stop thinking, that creates the noise.
Right.
This incessant mental noise prevents you from finding that realm of inner stillness that is inseparable from being, from your true nature. It also creates a false mind-made self, the ego, that casts a shadow of fear and suffering over your life.
And this is where Tolle challenges Descartes. I think, therefore I am.
Directly. He calls it the most basic error, because it equates thinking with being, and our entire identity gets wrapped up in our thoughts. The compulsive thinker, which Tolle argues is, frankly, almost everyone in modern society to some degree, lives in a state of apparent separateness, in an insanely complex world of continuous problems and conflict, largely generated by the mind itself. Enlightenment, by contrast, is presented as a state of fundamental wholeness, being at one with life and with your deepest true self. It's about moving beyond that incessant internal monologue.
So thinking has become a disease. That's a strong statement in the book.
It is, and the analogy used is quite striking. Cell division is a healthy, natural process for a physical body, right? But uncontrolled cell division is cancer.
Ah, okay, I see the parallel.
Similarly, thinking is a superb tool. It's a superb instrument if used rightly. The problem is it usually uses you. The source poses a direct challenge. Have you found the off button for your mind?
Can you choose to be silent internally?
Right. If you can't find that off button, if your thoughts just run on and on whether you want them to or not, then the mind is using you. You're unconsciously identified with it, so you don't even know that you are its slave.
Wow, that's a powerful wake-up call. You don't even know you're a slave to it.
It truly is. But the liberation, the pathway out of this enslavement, begins with a simple yet incredibly profound realization. The realization that you are not the thinker.
You are the awareness behind the thinker.
Exactly. The moment you start watching the thinker, a higher level of consciousness becomes activated. You shift from being the thoughts to being the observer of the thoughts. You step back.
And what does that do?
You then begin to realize that there is a vast realm of intelligence beyond thought. That thought is only a tiny aspect of that intelligence. This is where true beauty, profound love, effortless creativity, that uncaused joy Tolle experienced, and deep inner peace arise from. It's the realm beyond the mind. You begin to awaken to a larger reality within yourself.
This also must shed light on emotions then. They can feel so overwhelming, like these powerful forces that just sweep us away. How does the book connect emotions specifically to the mind?
Great question. The source clarifies that mind, in Tolle's context, includes your emotions as well as all unconscious mental emotional reactive patterns. So it's a much broader definition than just our cognitive thoughts.
Okay, mind isn't just thinking.
Right. An emotion, it states, arises at the place where mind and body meet. It is the body's reaction to your mind.
The body's reaction to the mind. Say more about that.
So an emotion is essentially the body's physiological response to your thoughts, or more accurately, to the interpretation your mind puts on a situation. Unconscious thought patterns, those deeply ingrained beliefs and assumptions we carry, are often first recognized not as abstract thoughts, but as distinct emotional sensations felt in the body.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you have a deeply held unconscious belief pattern that you're under attack or being threatened in some way. That mental pattern creates the emotion of anger or defensiveness, which you then feel physically as tension, heat, maybe not in your stomach, Or a thought about potential loss or future danger creates the physical sensation of fear, maybe tightness in the chest, rapid heartbeat.
So the thought comes first, even if unconsciously, and the body reacts with an emotion.
That's the model presented. And the more identified you are with your thinking, with that narrative the mind is spinning, the stronger the emotional charge you will feel physically in your body. And conversely, if you're cut off from your emotions, if you habitually suppress them, the book suggests they will inevitably manifest later as physical symptoms or even ailments in the body itself. The energy has to go somewhere.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's this concept of the pain body, which sounds quite heavy, quite ominous. Can you elaborate on what this is and how it functions according to Tolle?
Yes, the pain body. It's described as an accumulated residue of pain that lives on in you. It's not just about current pain. It's conceived as a semi-autonomous field of old, dense emotional energy that accumulates throughout your life.
From past hurts.
From past hurts, yes. It merges with past suffering from childhood traumas, painful experiences, maybe even collective human suffering passed down through generations. It's like an energetic entity composed of past pain.
And how does it operate?
Crucially, it can only survive if it gets you to unconsciously identify with it. It needs your unconsciousness to stay alive. Like a parasite needs a host.
It needs to feed.
It needs to feed. So it will feed on any experience that resonates with its own kind of energy. Anything that creates further pain in whatever form. Anger, destructiveness, hatred, grief, emotional drama, violence, and even physical illness. It seeks out situations or provokes reactions that generate more of the same negative energy it's made of.
So it perpetuates itself by creating more pain.
Exactly. Think of it like an addiction to unhappiness. And Tolle makes a key point. Pain can only feed on pain. Pain cannot feed on joy. It finds it quite indigestible.
Joy starves it.
In essence, yes. Presence, joy, peace. These are indigestible to the pain body. This is why the pain body actively doesn't want you to observe it directly and see it for what it is. Because direct, conscious observation is its undoing.
How so?
The moment you simply observe it, the moment you feel its energy field within you and take your attention into it without judgment or reaction, the identification is broken.
You stop feeding it with your unconscious reaction.
Precisely. A higher dimension of consciousness has come in. I call it presence. You become the witness, the watcher of the pain body, rather than being possessed by it. And it can no longer use you or replenish itself through your unconscious reactions. You've accessed the power of now, the power of presence, and this breaks its hold over you.
This connection to observation and presence sounds like it directly links to understanding where our constant, often background feeling of fear comes from, because often it's not about an immediate, concrete threat, is it?
No, usually it's not. The source explains that psychological fear, the kind most of us experience day to day, is almost always divorced from any concrete and true immediate danger.
It's anticipatory.
Exactly. It's always of something that might happen in the future, not of something that is happening now. Your mind is perpetually projected into the future, imagining negative scenarios, creating this anxiety gap between where you are now and where you think you need to be, or dwelling on what might go wrong.
And this connects to the ego.
Directly. As long as you're identified with your mind, the ego runs your life. And because of its phantom nature, remember, it exists primarily as a mental construct, a story, rather than a stable reality, the ego feels inherently very vulnerable and insecure. It constantly perceives itself as being under threat, even when there's no objective danger.
So it's always on high alert.
Always. And so the body continuously receives this internal message from the egoic mind. Danger, I am under threat. And the emotion generated by this continuous, often subconscious message is naturally pervasive fear.
Which explains the underlying anxiety many people feel.
Right. Tolle states, anyone who is identified with their mind will have fear as their constant companion. The intensity might fluctuate. Sometimes it's mild background anxiety, other times intense dread. But for most people operating primarily from the egoic mind, fear is a deep underlying current in their lives.
This is huge. It means our common understanding of seemingly positive emotions like love and joy might also be fundamentally flawed if they're often just part of this mind-driven duality you mentioned earlier.
That's a really important point the book makes. It clarifies that true love, true joy, and profound inner peace are described as deep states of being. They have no opposite, Tolle argues, because they arise beyond the mind, from your true essence, your connection to being itself.
Okay, they're non-dual.
Exactly. Emotions, however, being part of the dualistic mind, are subject to the law of opposites, which means you cannot have pleasure without the potential for pain, or what goes up must inevitably come down.
So everyday happiness isn't the same as joy.
Not according to this framework. What is sometimes called joy in the unenlightened, mind-identified state is often just the short-lived pleasure side of the continuous pain-pleasure cycle. Pleasure, the source notes, is always derived from something outside you. It's dependent on external conditions being good, whereas true joy arises from within, uncaused by anything external. It's a state of being.
So the thing that gives you pleasure today might cause pain tomorrow.
Almost inevitably, either through its eventual loss or simply because it ceases to satisfy or because the conditions change. Similarly, what is often referred to as love, particularly in the context of romantic relationships, might feel intensely pleasurable and exciting initially, but Tolle warns it's frequently an addictive clinging.
Addictive clinging.
Yes, an extremely needy condition that can turn into its opposite at the flick of a switch. He suggests many so-called love relationships actually oscillate violently between intense love and intense hate or resentment, precisely because they are rooted in egoic needs and unmet expectations, not in true being.
Whereas true love,
the source stresses, doesn't make you suffer in that way. It doesn't suddenly turn into hate or indifference because it's not based on external conditions fulfilling an egoic need or completing you. It arises from a place of fullness within.
so all this relentless craving we see and feel, this insatiable desire for more wealth, greater success, the perfect body, or even finding that perfect partner who will finally complete us, is really the mind unconsciously seeking salvation or fulfillment in external things and in the future.
As a substitute for the joy of being that is disconnected from.
Yes.
It's a profound misdirection of energy.
That insight feels truly transformative, because it shifts the entire paradigm of seeking happiness outside ourselves.
It does. Tolle isn't saying desire itself is inherently bad or wrong. The issue arises when we unconsciously chase external things or future states as a means to become happy or complete, believing that then we'll be okay. We're operating from a fundamental misperception about where true fulfillment lies.
So what's the alternative?
The core message is, don't seek to become free of desire. Become present. Be there as the observer of the mind.
Just watch the wanting, watch the mind.
Watch the wanting. Watch the mind's strategies. Feel the underlying unease that drives the seeking. When we do that, when we ground ourselves in the kartai, now we begin to realize something crucial. The vast majority of our human pain is not directly inflicted by external circumstances, but is actually unnecessary and self-created.
How is it self-created?
It arises primarily from non-acceptance, from unconscious resistance to what is, resistance to the present moment.
Okay.
On the level of thought, this resistance manifests as judgment, analysis, blame, complaining. Emotionally, it manifests as negative anger, frustration, sadness, resentment, despair. The intensity of our suffering, Tolle argues, directly correlates to the degree of our inner resistance to the present moment.
So the more you are identified with your mind, the more you suffer.
Exactly. And conversely, the more you are able to honor and accept the press. Now, the more you are free of pain, of suffering, and free of the egoic mind. It's presented as a direct correlation. Freedom lies in acceptance of the present.
The source gives a really chilling example of how belief in a future heaven creates a present hell, referencing the millions murdered to further the cause of communism, driven by an ideology focused entirely on a future utopia.
Yes, it uses that extreme example to illustrate the danger.
And it directly calls this psychological time, this compulsive obsession with future goals or past regrets, living anywhere but now, a serious and dangerous mental illness. Such a bold statement, equating a common mental habit with an illness.
It is bold, but it's meant to highlight the destructive potential of a mind that runs unchecked, completely divorced from the present reality. Tolle asserts quite starkly that all problems are illusions of the mind.
All problems. That seems extreme. What about real challenges?
That's a crucial distinction he makes. A situation that needs to be dealt with or accepted, like a health issue, financial difficulty, a relationship breakdown, is not inherently a problem in the way the ego experiences it. It only becomes a problem when the mind resists it, labels it negatively, projects catastrophic future scenarios, and creates suffering around it.
So the situation is neutral, the mind makes it a problem.
Essentially, yes. Problems give the egoic mind an identity, something to chew on, something to resist, allowing it to dwell on the situation without necessarily taking immediate present moment action. The problem becomes part of your sense of self and feeds the ego.
Can you give an example?
Okay, say you have a huge pile of debt. That's a situation. It requires attention and action. It only becomes a problem in the egoic sense when your mind starts worrying constantly, blaming yourself or others, imagining worst-case scenarios, feeling victimized, and resisting the simple reality of the situation right now.
But when you're fully present.
When you are fully present, the mind doesn't have time to fool around and make it into a problem. You simply see the situation for what it is and deal with the aspect that you can deal with now. This is why, the book notes, in true life or death emergencies, people often become capable of incredibly courageous, spontaneous deeds or exhibit extraordinary strength.
The thinking mind shuts down.
Yes. The mind, perhaps paralyzed by the sheer immediacy of the threat, stops its compulsive chatter, its worrying and analyzing. And something more powerful, the deeper intelligence of being, takes over. The urgency of the white now overrides the ego's tendency to create problems.
Okay. So with all this understanding of how the mind creates suffering through identification and resistance, how do we actively cultivate this state of presence? How do we effectively disidentify from the mind? The book offers several powerful portals, doesn't it? Starting with returning to that idea of watching the thinker.
Yes, watching the thinker. It means precisely that. Learning to listen impartially to that constant voice in your head. You know, the one, the endless commentary, the judgments, the complaints, the likes, the dislikes, the worries, the stories it tells about you and the world.
Just noticing it without getting caught up.
Exactly. The source explains that when you listen to a thought, you are aware not only of the thought, but also of yourself as the witness of the thought. And in that moment of witnessing, a new dimension of consciousness has come in.
The observer,
the witness. This new dimension is conscious presence, your deeper self, which arises from beyond the thinking mind. As you simply listen to the thoughts without judgment, without getting involved in their content, the thought loses its power over you and quickly subsides. Why? Because you are no longer unconsciously energizing the mind through identification with it.
You cut off its fuel supply.
You cut off its fuel supply. This, Tolle says, is the beginning of the end of involuntary and compulsive thinking. And it's important to note, this is not about going into a trance or becoming spaced out. In fact, he emphasizes you become much more alert, much more awake than in the mind-identified state.
More present, not less.
Much more present. And this state of pure awareness, interestingly, is even said to raise the vibrational frequency of the subtle energy field that gives vibrant life to the physical body. So it has tangible effects.
I really appreciate that the book provides practical, accessible techniques here. It's not just high-level abstract philosophy.
No, it's very grounded in practice. Besides just watching the thinker, you can also actively create a gap in the mind stream simply by directing the focus of your attention into the now.
How do you do that?
Just become intensely conscious of the present moment, whatever you are doing right now. Feel the sensations, notice the sounds, observe your breath. This intense focus on the cushion. Now, the source states is actually the essence of meditation.
So meditation isn't just sitting on a cushion?
Not necessarily. You can practice this presence in your everyday life. Take any routine activity and giving it your fullest undivided attention so that it becomes an end in itself, not just a means to an end.
Like washing the dishes.
Exactly. Or when walking upstairs, consciously pay close attention to every single step, the feeling of your feet on the stair, the movement of your legs, the rhythm of your breathing. When washing your hands, really notice the sound and feel of the water, the precise movement of your hands, the texture of the soap, its scent.
Or just pausing before driving.
Yes. Even pausing for just a few seconds after getting into your car to simply observe the flow of your breath, grounding yourself in the duration. Now, before you start driving, the criterion for success in this practice, the book says, isn't about achieving some mystical state. It's simply the degree of peace that you feel within while doing it.
That feels achievable.
It is. And the single most vital step on this whole journey to presence is learning to disidentify from your mind, because every time you create a gap in the stream of mind, the light of your consciousness grows stronger. These small moments of presence accumulate, creating profound shifts over time.
Okay, another particularly powerful portal for presence that the book introduces, and it might sound a bit unusual at first, is the inner body. What exactly does Tolle mean by connecting with your inner body, and how does that differ from just, being aware of your physical form?
That's a great point. It can sound a bit strange. To inhabit the body, as Tolle puts it, means to feel the body from within, to feel the life inside the body, and thereby come to know that you are beyond the outer form.
Feeling the life inside. Okay.
Our visible physical body, from this perspective, is seen as just an outer shell, or rather a limited and distorted perception of a deeper reality.
Yeah.
It's not primarily about what your body looks like or what it can do externally, but what it feels like internally, the aliveness within it.
So how do we do that? Can we try it?
Absolutely. The source invites us to try a mini practice right now, wherever you're listening. If it's safe to do so, gently close your eyes for a moment and just direct your attention inward into your body. Feel it from the inside. Is it alive? Can you feel perhaps a subtle energy field, a tingling, a warmth, a vibration that pervades the entire body and gives vibrant life to every organ and every cell?
Don't think about it, just feel.
Exactly. Don't think about it. The key is to feel it directly. The more attention you gently give it, the clearer and stronger the feeling usually becomes. Even if you only feel a slight tingling sensation, maybe in your hands or feet, or a general sense of warmth, or just a subtle vibration that's perfectly fine, that's enough for the moment. Just focus your awareness on that feeling, allowing it to spread perhaps throughout your internal space.
And doing that grounds you.
It grounds you instantly in the now, because your inner body only exists now. You can't feel your inner body yesterday or tomorrow.
That's true. This raises an interesting and historical question, though. Why have so many religions throughout history seemed to, well, condemn or deny the body? Often viewing it as something lowly, something to be transcended, or even as a source of sin.
That's a really important question, and the book offers a fascinating perspective on it. It explains that after what some traditions call humanity's fall from a state of grace and oneness into illusion, humans found themselves seemingly trapped in what appeared to be just an animal body, subject to decay, physical urges, mortality.
Which felt like a downgrade.
Exactly. It was deeply disturbing to the burgeoning human consciousness, this sense of being trapped in flesh. This led, the theory goes, to an unconscious denial of their animal nature, resulting in feelings of shame, the creation of taboos around natural bodily functions and sexuality.
And religions picked up on this?
Religions, often in an attempt to help people transcend this perceived lower nature, sometimes reinforce this disassociation. They promoted the "you are not your body" belief, and in some cases, even advocated for body denial, extreme fasting, or harsh ascetic practices as a supposed path to enlightenment.
But Tolle disagrees with that approach.
Emphatically. He states clearly that no one has ever become enlightened through denying or fighting the body or through an out-of-the-body experience. True transformation, he emphasizes, is through the body, not away from it.
Why through the body?
Because the inner body, that felt sense of aliveness, is described as lying at the threshold between your form identity, your temporary self that exists in time and space, and your essence identity, your true timeless nature, being itself. Keeping your attention anchored in the inner body, therefore, anchors you directly in the now, connecting you to that deeper essence and allowing consciousness to flow more fully through your physical form. It's the gateway.
Okay, that makes sense. Beyond the inner body, the book also highlights other accessible portals to presence, specifically silence and space. How do these seemingly abstract concepts help us access the now? They seem like nothing.
They do seem like nothing, and that's precisely their power. It's quite profound when you really consider it. Think about silence. Just as every sound is born out of silence, dies back into silence, and during its lifespan is surrounded by silence, paying conscious attention to the outer silence, the gaps between sounds, the quietness underneath the noise actually creates inner stillness.
Listening for the silence.
Yes. It calms the incessant chatter of the mind almost immediately. This directly opens a portal to presence. And similarly, think about space. Every physical object or body has come out of nothing, is surrounded by nothing, and will eventually return to nothing.
The space between things.
Exactly. Even what appears to be solid matter, including our own physical bodies, is scientifically proven to be nearly 100% empty space at the atomic level. This nothing, this emptiness that pervades and surrounds all form, is what Tolle refers to as the unmanifested, the source of all creation. Pure being, pure potentiality.
So the practical application here is to withdraw attention from the objects in space and become aware of space itself, to feel it, as it were, pay attention to nothing. It sounds, again, deceptively simple and maybe a little bit like trying to disappear.
It is simple, but immensely powerful, not about disappearing. When you do this, when you become consciously aware of the empty space around you, the space between the furniture in your room, the space between people, the vastness of the sky, or the silence between sounds, a profound shift in consciousness can occur. By becoming aware of that outer space or silence, you simultaneously become aware of the inner space of no mind, of pure consciousness, the unmanifested. It's like the outer reflects the inner. Silence and space, Tolle says, are really two aspects of the same thing, the same nothing. They are the externalizations of our own potential inner space and inner silence. the stillness of being.
And most people miss this.
He observes that most humans are profoundly out of balance in this regard. They know the world of forms intimately, identifying exclusively with objects, thoughts, emotions, situations, the things, but they don't know God, or the unmanifested, the source, the formless awareness from which everything arises.
But it's not separate.
No, it's not some distant entity. It is the life within every form, the consciousness pervading the world, but it's often missed because our attention is solely fixed on the forms themselves, on the things, these portals. Inner body, silence, space, help us shift our attention from the what to the underlying isness, the presence itself.
Okay, so when we start to consistently integrate these practices, watching the thinker, connecting with the inner body, tuning into silence and space, how does it fundamentally change our very approach to life? Thinking about things like our goals, our experience of suffering, and maybe especially our most intimate relationships. It sounds like it could lead to a total reorientation.
It really is described as a complete reorientation, a fundamental shift in how we perceive and experience reality. What's fascinating here is how enlightenment, or simply living more consistently in presence, redefines our relationship with thought itself.
How so?
Well, the mind, while a truly invaluable tool for practical purposes like, building a house or navigating a city or designing a bridge, when it becomes an addiction, when we're constantly thinking compulsively, it causes a serious leakage of vital energy from our core being.
It drains us.
It drains us. The source asserts that all true artists create from a place of no mind, from inner stillness, whether they consciously realize it or not. That creativity flows from a deeper place than just analytical thought.
And scientists too.
Yes. Even many great scientists, including someone like Albert Einstein, reported that their most profound creative breakthroughs came not necessarily from intense, grinding intellectual effort, but during moments of mental quietude, a sudden flash of insight that seemed to transcend conventional thought processes.
So there's a deeper intelligence.
It strongly suggests that there is clearly an intelligence at work that is far greater than the mind, an intelligence we can tap into when the compulsive thinking stops. In the enlightened or present state, you still use your thinking mind, of course, but in a much more focused and effective way, primarily for practical problem-solving when needed.
But the baseline is stillness.
Yes, there's a deep, continuous inner stillness as the background. And when creative solutions or actions are needed, you might consciously oscillate between thought and that stillness, drawing inspiration and guidance from that deeper intelligence, rather than just relying on the conditioned mind.
This sounds like it would also radically transform our relationships, which, let's face it, are often sources of both our greatest joy and our deepest pain.
It absolutely does. The book states quite unequivocally that unless and until you access the consciousness frequency of presence, all relationships, and particularly intimate relationships, are deeply flawed and ultimately dysfunctional.
That's a strong claim, deeply flawed and dysfunctional.
It's a provocative statement, yes. Yeah. It argues that what is commonly called romantic love, especially that initial intense infatuation phase, is often, from the ego's perspective, an addictive clinging.
Why addictive?
Because it's driven by a strong ego need for a more complete and deeper sense of self. The other person temporarily seems to fill a void, cover up underlying pain and feelings of incompleteness, creating a temporary, exhilarating sense of wholeness.
But it doesn't last.
No, because the underlying pain and the egoic structures inevitably resurface. And that pain is then often projected onto the partner, turning into blame, resentment, conflict. The love turns sour. Tolle explains this dynamic by saying, every addiction arises from an unconscious refusal to face and move through your own pain. We seek external fixes instead.
Whereas true love,
again, is said to have no opposite. It arises beyond the mind, from the depth of your being. It's an emanation of your true self, a recognition of the being in the other, not a needy attachment based on egoic lack.
That's a very powerful distinction. The book even suggests that relationships, rather than just being about finding happiness with someone, can become a spiritual practice in themselves. A sadhana, I think is the term used.
Yes, sadhana.
How does that actually work in the messiness of real-life relationships with the conflict and challenges?
It's a truly profound teaching and very practical. The idea is that your relationship itself becomes your sadhana, which is a Sanskrit term for a spiritual discipline or path. It means that the relationship, with all its inevitable challenges, triggers, and dynamics, becomes your direct path to spiritual awakening and growth if you approach it consciously.
How do you approach it consciously?
The key is to know your inner state, your reactions, your emotions, your thoughts, and as much as possible, to be aware of the inner state of your partner without immediate judgment or unconscious reaction. If there's anger arising in you, the instruction is know that there is anger.
Don't suppress it, don't act it out, just know it's there.
Exactly. Don't resist it, don't deny it, but also don't get possessed by it and act it out unconsciously. Simply observe it within yourself. By observing unconscious behavior patterns, the reactivity, the defensiveness, the blame in yourself and your partner, without reacting automatically, by holding it in the loving embrace of your knowing, your presence, you create a space.
A space for what?
A space for transformation. This allows things to be as they are in that moment, acknowledging the reality of the egoic patterns without judgment. And that very acceptance, that conscious awareness, acts as a powerful catalyst for transformation, both for you and potentially for the relationship dynamic itself.
That requires a lot of presence.
It does. Regarding gender dynamics, the source also includes a fascinating, though admittedly generalized, observation. It suggests that, generally speaking, women may be naturally closer to being, closer to the intuitive, feeling, unmanifested aspect of reality, which it poetically calls the mother of the universe.
Okay.
Whereas men's primary obstacle, again generalizing, tends to be the thinking mind, which can sometimes disconnect them more easily from their feeling nature and intuition.
Interesting. And it mentions the collective female pain body.
Yes, it posits that the collective female pain body, accumulated from millennia of subjugation, systemic oppression, and childbirth-related suffering, while a source of deep pain, also offers women a particularly powerful opportunity for enlightenment, especially during times like menstruation, when that pain body might be more active. By consciously observing it, feeling its energy without being taken over by its emotional intensity, it becomes a direct doorway into presence, into disidentification.
Wow. That's reframing something often seen negatively into a potential spiritual advantage.
It's definitely a different perspective.
And then there's another truly radical idea introduced. The instruction to give up the relationship with yourself. That sounds almost nihilistic, or like denying your own identity completely. What does Tolle mean by that?
It's indeed one of the most radical and potentially liberating ideas in the book, and yes, it's very easily misunderstood. The core idea is that the mind-created duality of I and myself, the thinker, and the object of thought, is presented as the root cause of all unnecessary complexity, of all problems and conflict in your life.
The internal split.
Exactly. This internal split where the I is the thinker, the judge, the feeler, and the myself is the one being thought about, judged, or felt sorry for, is what creates self-consciousness, self-pity, self-doubt, pride, shame, even self-love as a conditional state based on performance or external validation.
So what happens in enlightenment or presence?
In enlightenment, Tolle says, these two selves merge. The split is healed. There is no longer an I judging or relating to a myself. There's just being. You do not judge yourself. You do not feel sorry for yourself. You do not love yourself. You do not hate yourself in that dualistic way anymore. All those reactions stem from the internal duality, the separation.
So it's not denying who you are, but dissolving the false separation.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Tolle says, the split caused by self-reflective consciousness is healed. When you are enlightened, there is one relationship that you no longer have, the relationship with yourself. Once that fraught internal relationship is given up, the book makes the astonishing claim that all your other relationships will be love relationships.
Why?
Because they will arise from the unified, authentic being from a place of wholeness, not from the needy, fragmented, problem-creating ego seeking validation or completion through others.
That's an astonishing claim indeed. So this implies a completely different perspective on happiness and suffering than most of us grew up with. We're generally taught to pursue happiness and avoid pain at all costs.
Absolutely. The conventional understanding is basically turned on its head. Tolle states clearly, happiness depends on conditions being perceived as positive. Inner peace does not.
Happiness is conditional. Peace is unconditional.
That's the distinction. Happiness is fleeting, dependent on external factors lining up the way your mind wants them to. Inner peace, however, is presented as an unconditional state that arises from within, from your connection to being, regardless of external circumstances.
And suffering, can it be useful?
Paradoxically, yes. The source even suggests that suffering, whether it comes in the form of limitation, failure, loss, illness, or heartbreak, can be the greatest teacher and potentially the quickest path to awakening if it is embraced consciously with acceptance rather than resistance.
Even things we perceive as evil.
Even what we perceive as evil or intensely negative is seen from a higher perspective as part of the higher good that has no opposite. especially when it is met with and transformed by forgiveness and acceptance, which arise from presence. The ego, remember, being the unobserved mind, fundamentally needs problems, conflict, and enemies to sustain its existence and its sense of identity.
It thrives on drama.
It thrives on drama, but when you live in complete acceptance of what is, that is the end of all drama in your life. You literally cannot have an argument with a fully conscious person.
Why not?
Because an argument implies identification with a mental position, needing to be right, and putting up internal resistance to the other person's position. A fully conscious person might state their view clearly, but there's no reactive force, no ego investment behind it. They are present, not identified with the mind stance, so there's nothing for an argument to hook into.
This is a profound shift, especially when considering the inescapable impermanence of everything in life. Most of us fight tooth and nail against change, loss, and the natural cycles of growth and decay.
Indeed. The book highlights the fundamental truth that all conditions are highly unstable and in constant flux. This isn't presented as a negative or pessimistic observation, but simply as the nature of reality in the realm of form. It means that every condition, every situation you will ever encounter in your life, it will change, disappear, or no longer satisfy you. Nothing external is permanent.
And our attachment to permanence causes suffering.
Exactly. Our attachment to permanence in an inherently impermanent world is identified as a root cause of suffering. Growth cannot go on forever in one direction. Dissolution is needed for new growth. Think of the seasons or cycles in nature. What Tolle calls the down cycle, those periods of breakdown, loss, difficulty, or apparent failure, is actually deemed absolutely essential for spiritual realization.
Why essential? Because it breaks down the ego.
It challenges the ego, forces surrender, potentially breaks identification with form. He references the Buddha's profound teaching that even your happiness is dukkha, suffering. Not because happiness is bad, but because it's inseparable from its opposite. It's impermanent and contains the seed of its eventual loss or fading, which causes suffering if we're attached.
It's not condemning happiness, just seeing its transient nature.
Precisely. He shares the analogy of ducks after they have a fight. They flap their wings vigorously for a moment, shaking off the excess energy, and then they immediately return to paddling peacefully in the paddocks. Now, not holding on to the negativity or the story of the fight.
Unlike humans who replay arguments for days.
Or years. Or the story of the Zen master Banzan's Enlightenment. It apparently came when he overheard the monastery cook complaining about rations and then saying, resignedly but perhaps with sudden insight, well, every piece of meat, every moment is the best. This simple statement, rooted in absolute acceptance of what is in that present moment, reportedly triggered Banzan's awakening.
Just accepting the reality of this piece of meat right now.
Yes. This isn't meant to be a negative or resigned view of life, but a liberating recognition of the nature of things. It frees us from the exhausting and ultimately futile quest of seeking lasting fulfillment, where it fundamentally cannot be found in fleeting external conditions or future achievements.
So if we can't fight against the natural flow of life, and resisting it just creates suffering, what about this concept of surrender? How does that actually work, especially when we're facing genuinely difficult, painful situations? It sounds dangerously close to just giving up or being passive.
That's a very common and important concern. It's crucial to understand that true surrender, as the Source explains it, is the simple but profound wisdom of yielding to, rather than opposing the flow of life. It does not mean passive resignation to an undesirable situation, nor does it mean simply doing nothing when action is needed.
So what does it mean?
It means accepting the present moment unconditionally and without reservation. It means relinquishing your inner resistance to what is in this very instant.
Accepting the moment, not necessarily the whole situation long term.
Exactly. You accept the isness of this moment, the reality of it, however challenging or unpleasant it may feel right now. Once you have internally accepted the reality of this moment, then you can take positive action, if action is required or possible. But that action arises from a place of inner alignment, not resistance.
And non-surrender, resistance.
Non-surrender, the book says, hardens your psychological form, the shell of the ego. It creates a sense of rigidity, separateness, fosters fear, and causes deep inner tension and contraction. Surrender, however, by accepting the liturgy, now softens that shell and reconnects you to the source energy of being, which is described as a vast reservoir of power, intelligence, and peace.
So action from surrender feels different.
Completely different. If your actions are then infused with being, arising from that place of acceptance, they become a joyful celebration of life energy unfolding, not a stressful struggle or a heavy burden. This surrendered action is not work, as we've typically known it, driven by anxiety or ego.
And the quality of our consciousness matters more than the action itself.
That's a key idea here. The quality of your consciousness at this moment is the main determinant of what kind of future you will experience. Action is secondary to the state of your inner being. If your action arises from presence and acceptance, it will likely create a future that reflects that quality. If it arises from fear and resistance, it perpetuates that energy.
Okay, but let's get practical. If we're in real pain, say experiencing deep grief, intense fear, or chronic physical pain, how do we actually practice this surrender? It feels almost impossible, maybe even disrespectful, to simply accept something so agonizing.
That's a very real and understandable challenge. The book guides us by saying, you start by acknowledging that there is resistance. Be there when it happens. Don't judge yourself for resisting, just observe the resistance itself.
Notice the no inside.
Yes. Watch how your mind labels the situation. This is terrible. I can't stand this. Watch how it complains about it and feel the corresponding emotion, the contraction, the tension, the pain in your body. By simply witnessing this resistance, this internal no, you immediately begin to see that it serves no positive purpose. It actually just perpetuates and intensifies the suffering.
And Tolle says you can't be conscious and unhappy simultaneously.
He emphasizes that. You cannot be conscious and unhappy, conscious and in negativity. If you are truly present, truly aware without judgment, that state of negativity dissolves because it requires unconscious identification to survive. So if you find you can't accept the external condition, the difficult job you hate, the chronic illness, the challenging relationship dynamic, then the instruction is accept the internal condition.
Meaning accept the feeling about the situation.
Yes, do not resist the pain, allow it to be there. Surrender to the grief, despair, fear, loneliness, or whatever form the suffering takes. It's a radical acceptance of the emotion itself as it is arising in this moment, not wanting it to be different.
Just letting it be felt, fully.
Exactly. Full attention is full acceptance, is surrender. Paradoxically, when you stop resisting the pain and allow it to be, it often loses its grip and begins to transform or dissolve on its own because you're no longer feeding it with resistance. The acceptance of deep suffering is even described metaphorically as a journey into death.
How so?
Facing deep pain, allowing it to be, is to enter death consciously. It's not metaphorical death, of course. Only the ego dies, that false mind-made self that resists reality. Tolle describes the way of the cross, exemplified by figures like Jesus, as the old way to enlightenment, a path through intense suffering that eventually forces one to surrender when there's simply no other options left. The suffering becomes unbearable, breaking the ego's resistance.
But there's another way now.
Yes, he suggests that now, enlightenment consciously chosen means to relinquish your attachment to past and future, and to make the now the main focus of your life. This implies a profound choice, a conscious decision to live differently, available to us right now.
And choice requires consciousness.
Exactly. Choice implies consciousness, the book states. Without this conscious presence, we aren't really choosing. We are largely compelled to think, feel, and act in certain ways according to the conditioning of the mind, reacting automatically like puppets on strings based on past programming. This is why Jesus said on the cross, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." They are acting from deep unconsciousness, unaware of the deeper reality.
This vision, then, it isn't just about individual personal transformation, finding peace for ourselves. It speaks to a much larger collective shift, almost like a planetary awakening is needed. It sounds like the stakes are incredibly high.
They are presented as being incredibly high. The book states that the breaking up of the old mode of consciousness, or rather unconsciousness, is part of a profound transformation that is taking place in the collective consciousness of the planet and beyond. The awakening of consciousness from the dream of matter, form, and separation.
And this awakening isn't just a nice idea, it's essential.
It's framed not just as a spiritual ideal, but potentially as humanity's only chance of survival as a race. Tolle argues quite starkly that the collective egoic mind, the sum total of human unconsciousness running rampant, is the most dangerously insane and destructive entity ever to inhabit this planet, responsible for wars, environmental devastation, and unimaginable widespread suffering throughout history.
And things we used to escape don't help.
He suggests that current common societal escapes, like the pervasive use of alcohol, drugs, or even compulsive entertainment and consumption, ultimately just delay the breakdown of the old mind structures and the emergence of higher consciousness. They keep us numb and identified with form. Tolle is quite firm on this. Falling back to a level of consciousness below mind is not an option. We can't regress. There is no way back. Humanity, he implies, must evolve to the next stage of conscious awareness, embracing presence, or face potentially devastating existential threats born from its own unconsciousness.
So it's not just about us as individuals achieving inner peace for our own benefit, but our very survival as a species seems to depend, in this view, on this collective awakening happening. The source even mentions how Eckhart Tolle approaches his own teaching, doesn't it?
Yes, his approach is described as beautifully simple and profound. He often says something like, I am not teaching you. You are consciousness and you are listening to yourself.
That immediately shifts the dynamic, doesn't it? It empowers the listener.
Completely. It reminds the listener of their own inherent wisdom, their own connection to the consciousness being spoken of. Words, he suggests, are primarily carriers of the high-energy frequency of presence. They point beyond themselves. But even more potent than the words themselves is the silence.
The gaps between words.
Yes, he emphasizes, be aware of the silence between and underneath the words. Practicing this while listening immediately creates stillness within the listener, allowing the deeper message, the presence itself, to land more effectively than just intellectual understanding ever could.
And how does this view reinterpret traditional figures, like Christ?
The concept of Christ is also reframed in Tolle's work. It's presented not primarily as an external historical figure to be worshipped from afar, but as a symbol of your God essence or the self, your own innate potential for awakened divinity, the Christ consciousness within you.
Okay.
Jesus' profound statement, before Abraham was, I am, is highlighted and called a Zen-like statement of great profundity. It points directly to timeless presence, the eternal I am beyond the linear time dimension, which is available right now. And the concept of the second coming is understood not as a literal physical return of Jesus, but metaphorically as a transformation of human consciousness, a shift from time to presence that is happening or needs to happen within humanity collectively.
So what's the ultimate purpose of this world then, according to this perspective? If it's all about presence and transcending the limitations of the mind and form, is there a grander design?
Yes, there is a purpose described. The ultimate purpose of the world lies not within the world, but in transcendence of the world.
That sounds paradoxical again. We need the world to transcend it.
Exactly. Tolle clarifies that the world is needed for the unmanifested. Pure consciousness, the source to be realized. The physical world, with all its forms, challenges, and experiences, serves as a necessary vehicle, a kind of contrast or mirror through which the formless consciousness can become aware of itself as consciousness, distinct from form.
So our experience here matters deeply.
Immensely. This leads to an incredibly empowering realization articulated in the book.
Yeah.
You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold. That is how important you are. Your awakening contributes to the universe knowing itself.
Wow. And what about death? Physical death?
Even at the moment of physical death, a profound portal is said to open. This is described in texts like the Tibetan Book of the Dead as experiencing the luminous splendor of the colorless light of emptiness. Tolle affirms this is essentially your own true self, pure consciousness, unveiling itself as the form dissolves. It marks the death of the false self, the ego. He stresses repeatedly, only the ego dies, not your true essence, not consciousness itself.
So by changing ourselves, by truly awakening to our inner presence, we can literally contribute to creating a new world, a new collective reality that feels like a huge responsibility, but also a tremendous source of hope.
It is presented as both. Tolle suggests that when humanity truly awakens, even if it starts with individuals, this interchange will affect all of creation. You won't just perceive the world differently. You will literally inhabit a new world because your state of consciousness shapes your reality. He references St. Paul's biblical statement that the created universe is waiting with eager expectation for God's sons and daughters to be revealed, implying this collective revelation of awakened consciousness is cosmically significant.
So our primary task isn't fixing the world out there first.
Not primarily, no. Your primary task, the source clarifies, is not to seek salvation through creating a better world by external action alone, but to awaken out of identification with form. To find presence within yourself first. Only then, operating from that place of presence, can you make a real contribution to the world that is truly impactful and sustainable, not just another ego-driven project. Your healing influence is primarily based not on doing, but on being.
Being present is the contribution.
It's the foundational contribution. It's about radiating that consciousness, that peace into the world.
But that sounds almost passive again. What about fighting against injustice, poverty, environmental destruction? Don't we have a responsibility to actively do something about the suffering in the world?
It's definitely not meant as passive inaction, but rather as a strategic and conscious approach to action. The source advises against fighting unconsciousness directly with more unconsciousness, just as you cannot fight the darkness with more darkness. You bring in the light.
How does that apply here?
If you try to fight unconsciousness with unconscious resistance, anger, or hatred, the polar opposites will become strengthened. You inadvertently end up feeding the very energy you oppose, getting caught in the same cycle of conflict. Instead, the approach encouraged involves raising awareness, speaking truth, and engaging in passive resistance where appropriate, but crucially, to carry no resistance within, no hatred, no negativity.
Love your enemies.
Exactly. Jesus' radical teaching, love your enemies, which of course means have no enemies, is presented as the ultimate expression of non-resistance on an inner level. Your primary focus needs to remain on the causal level, the level of consciousness, the teaching of enlightenment, of presence, because that's where true, lasting change originates. And from that place of inner alignment, your deep inner peace becomes your most precious and powerful gift to the world, a truly healing influence that informs any action you take.
Wow, what a journey we've been on. We've truly taken a deep dive into some incredibly profound and sometimes challenging concepts, from Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. We've explored how our minds can, often completely unconsciously, become our masters rather than our servants. We've seen how our emotions are so intimately linked to this mental identification and resistance.
And crucially, how simply choosing to be present, to step back, become the conscious observer of our thoughts and feelings, can radically transform everything.
From our personal suffering and anxiety to the dynamics in our relationships, and maybe even our collective human future.
We've seen that the core message is that your true self, your essence, is found not in the relentless chatter of the mind, nor lost in the illusions of past regrets or future worries, but right here, in the timeless, vibrant now.
Yeah.
And practices like watching the thinker, connecting with the felt sense of the inner body, tuning into silence and space, and practicing radical acceptance, surrendering to what is in this moment. These aren't just abstract philosophies. They're presented as profoundly practical steps toward liberation and a deeper connection to life itself.
This isn't just theory, is it? It really feels like an invitation. An invitation to a radical, potentially liberating shift in how you, listening right now, experience every single moment of your life, starting right here, right now.
It's available in this instant.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If your very state of being, your level of presence, can truly transform your personal world and actively contribute to a new, more conscious collective reality for all of humanity, what one small aspect of your present moment, maybe that routine activity you usually rush through, that subtle sensation waiting in your inner body, or that brief moment of silence between sounds, what one small thing will you choose to fully inhabit with your complete attention today?
Just one moment can be the start.
Until next time, keep diving deep into the present.
Thanks for tuning in to the Book Summary Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, hit that like button, subscribe for more summaries, and share it with someone who's ready to grow. Want deeper insights, exclusive book notes, and reading tips? Join our free newsletter. The link's in the description. And don't forget, if you'd like to read the full book, our affiliate link is right below. It helps support the channel and keeps the summaries coming. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing.